Oh, boy. Hi. Let me move that, put that up there like that. And wow. It's been absolutely nuts lately. Let me close this door. I'm overlit. There's so much stuff going on with this phenomenon that I'm literally overwhelmed. And this morning, I'm doing yoga and meditation, and I start getting talked to again. And I have to admit, at this point, it's like, okay, is this just me imagining this? Am I making this up? Can you talk to yourself? I suppose you can in your head. I mean, a lot of us do it. But this was so different from my thinking, well, gee, that guy sure's got a problem, to what I was getting this morning and have been getting. And so I sort of challenged it. And I said, okay, how come we're having this conversation? What's going on? Why hasn't this happened before? It has in some to some extent, but not like this. This is getting prolific. And the term, I wrote about it this morning, and the term they used was "you weren't receptive," which makes me think that because I didn't believe my own senses, that I couldn't converse with them because I didn't believe it. I'm still having a hard time believing it, but you just know. You just know when it's different. It's just a feeling that that this is not right. This is not me thinking. Yes, it's time, Zoe. I see. Yeah, that's the expression. And I was talking to Whitley this morning, and he used that term, and I just got through writing about it. It's time, and then some other people started mentioning it, and then we had a call from a personal close friend who's very involved in this that some of you will probably know. And he starts talking about what's going on based on what he's been told by the entity he has contact with. And it was carbon copy to what I had written. It's carbon copy to the film I'm making, the short film I'm doing right now. It's not interviewing someone or showing their experience. It's actually a film. It's something that I wrote that's fictional, but about the subject matter. And I'm not going to give it away in any way, shape, or form because it really has a twist at the end. And then, he's talking and Whitley's talking to me and Whitley's book's coming out and it's all the same. So there's something really going on here. Different than the usual. Well, I woke up, I saw the blue light, and I think something happened last night, and I got a mark, and and they told me this and that. It's just really different. It's personal. One of the things that I brought up to my friend Mark was that what it seems is going on is similar to how we deal with wild animals. Diane Fossey's a good example of that, how she got the gorilla's trust, and she did that by being visible to them. And of course, they were frightened and they did not get close. But over time, her constant reappearance and the fact that they realized she wasn't a threat, they got closer and closer to the point where she was able to actually converse with them, spend time with them, and commune with them on a level that no human has ever been able to achieve. And this has been done before, repeatedly, with the relationship between us and animals, which I never look down my nose at. I've considered them equals. But getting their trust and being able to communicate with them is a very important thing. And I remember Mark saying that's exactly what's going on here. That's why they're doing things the way they are, gradually, bit by bit. But it's really accelerating right now because we're at a critical point. So I see that we got Katie back, and I assume that her headphones are working now. I see Earl Grey. I'm getting thumbs up. So let's bring on Katie, and we'll bring on Earl. And
Hello there, you guys. How are you
Still
doing?
laughing about what I had to say, I guess. So,
Oh no, I love what you had to say. Hey,
but it's
listen,
crazy though.
the
I mean, they're
message I
full
get,
on talking to me. I mean, and it's like I just don't want to accept that it's real for some reason. And there's no way the things that are being said to me that my mind is making up to me. So,
my
Katie,
guys
welcome.
are real boring. They keep on saying, keep doing what you're doing and don't change anything. About
Yeah.
4 years ago, I was told, um, your ripples are going to become waves. So keep
Hmm.
going.
Nice.
And so I say that a lot. Ripples become waves, and I think that
Hmm.
we're seeing some waves right now, which is a good thing. So how are you doing, Katie? How's your headphones? Are they the cans are
I'm doing
working good
good.
now?
Yeah,
Okay, good,
hopefully.
good, good.
Yeah, these bows weren't connecting correctly, but I got another pair, so I'm good to go. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Heck
Thank
yeah.
you. So,
So
where do we begin? Let's talk about you, Katie, and bring people up to speed. I'm sure a lot of people here are already very familiar with you. My research showed that you've been very busy out there.
Yeah, I try to stay busy, but like so many people out there, I just got into this field. I actually started with more of the paranormal things because, like so many, I compartmentalized all these different things that occurred to me my whole life. Paranormal, the hitchhiker effect. But I started, oh gosh, 13 years ago in UFOs and UAP research because of my experiences on a Rocky Mountain ranch in Colorado, which really I never knew anybody knew anything about until I bought Hunt for the Skinwalker right here and started reading about the ranch in Colorado and making those
oh,
connections. I was like, holy crap, that's it. And it's just been a Pandora's box ever since, looking for answers. There's so many things that go on out there and still do. So it's never ending work, really.
So you put together over time that all these phenomena are very much related.
100%. You
Yeah,
can't, yeah, there's no question about that. And it was a little frustrating. I love MUFON. I was Colorado MUFON state director for a long time, but there for a while, they were kind of hesitant to make all those connections. And I get why, right?
a
They
lot of
wanted to
people
keep
are.
it nuts and bolts, but
Yeah,
it's connected for sure
it's
in
not
my
though.
experience.
And what I got told this morning was the place you call the other side, the astral plane, where you go when you pass away, is where we reside.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I just recently lost my mother. She was 92, so it was time. It was time for her to go. She had no quality of life here on this plane, but we've had some experiences since she's passed, which have really given me comfort in saying there is something else after we leave this earth, these
Yeah, I've
earthly
had that
bodies.
experience
Yeah,
myself, and
right.
I didn't know that my girlfriend, who was only 24, this was a long time
Oh
ago, was going to
no.
pass. She passed from brain aneurysm suddenly, and
hmm.
she wasn't staying at my house that night. We lived together, but she was at her friend's house, and she came to me at the almost exact moment she passed away because she was very very skeptical of my beliefs, but very kind about it. That's one of the things I loved about Judy is that she'd laugh about it and giggle and tease me about it, but she came a beeline to me to tell me I was on a level, that I was right
That's cool.
and not to worry about me. And it wasn't until later on the day after I got back from the screening of a film I worked on that I found out she had passed away at that exact time. And there were details about how she was found I knew I could not have known. So
Hmm.
it changes you forever.
Yeah,
I mean,
Hmm.
it's
so you
true.
got that experience with your mother.
Yep, and others, and my father and my brother and, my
And
half-brother.
so
But yeah,
how,
so many.
what was the environment when you were in that experience?
Yeah, well, with my mother, just right after she passed, it was the next weekend, I had my middle son, Jesse, and his new girlfriend up here. I live behind Pikes Peak in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, and we
It's a
were
great
just
place to
hanging.
race.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love it. But we were just hanging out on the back porch, and we have those outdoor lights that hang there, and they come, they're a string of 12. But
Hmm.
five of the lights started just acting crazy. So I'm always a debunker, right? I always try to work out reasonable explanations. I'm like,
We
well,
all do.
yeah, yeah. But we had this whole conversation. So there were 4 witnesses to that. Nobody thought to record it or anything until the weekend later. I'm sitting there watching the TV and I had the blinds closed and I saw the lights kind of changing again through the screen. And I'm like, maybe there's lightning out there. Well, those 5 lights, only 5 of them were working, not 6, not all 12, but 5. And so I had this 7-minute conversation where my mom would flash them white. And I'm like, if I'm speaking with something that is, if I'm speaking to you, Mom, that I want you to flash all these 5 lights red. And she did that twice. So I
Wow.
recorded all that. I have the recording. It's pretty cool. And I was asking her questions and she would respond with the flash. But you know, what's really weird about that, since that time, it's been pretty quiet. Like I feel her around, but I keep asking her like to do other things, but I don't know what the rules are on the other side, but there must be something, you know, because, or maybe we manifest it. That's my other thought. Did I make the lights flash, you know, because of my sorrow? That's the other question I have. Do we have the power to manifest the paranormal?
I've been
and
talking
ETs for that matter.
Yeah, we do.
I've been talking
do,
with
but there's-
Jeffrey Kripal's mentor lately, a gentleman by the name of Kevin, who he has a chapter in Jeff Kripal's new book, Thinking Impossibly, and very interesting guy. But he talks about how much we have part of manifesting things, and Kevin's a guy who manifested a giant black triangle, and he was more surprised than anybody. There it was over himself and his wife. It's like,
I don't think I manifested mine, but I may have.
Yeah,
the one I told you about.
Either myself.
Yeah,
no,
I know.
I didn't
So
either.
this is an interesting question.
But apparently, you can do that.
This is an interesting question, and the whole thing is that, and I wrote about this morning in Community, is that you can't expect them to come here and save us. You know, it's up to us. They've given us the tools, and so we have to do what we're supposed to do. The reason we came here.
It's our test.
Yeah.
You know, there's a big community out there, and I think that we can join, but we have to prove ourselves, you know, like we're not going to go out there and leave a trail of dead behind ourselves, like, you know, barbarians. And unfortunately, we're still acting like barbarians in the world, you know. And so
you didn't read
this is our job. It's a hard job, but we're going to do it because ripples become waves, correct?
I addressed that, Earl, this morning, and I wrote about the fact, and I was very blunt about it, that many of us feel and clearly remember our first day in school or going to school for the first time, and just thinking to ourselves, this is just wrong. This is a mistake. I don't belong here. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not interested in this existence. And, you know, we remember looking at the stars and kind of longing to travel within them again. And only, you know, I'm 72 now, all these years later, to find out that I'm far from being alone with that. They call it star seeds. I mean, the bottom line is that our visitors, whoever they may be, and I know there are people who've had negative experiences with beings that they don't like. I haven't had that, fortunately. And in my visitors, if I'm to believe it, I was one of them. And many of us were placed in human lives from infancy into this existence with no real recall of who we were before, to understand the human condition, to understand human beings, and to put us in a position where we could help. And, you know, that was really clear in Judy. Thank you, Muni. That was really clear in Judy's testimony, especially at the end of her film about her story. And you're going to see it again this weekend with Susan, the Jackrabbit case that you were so kind to hook us up with.
Case.
Girl. So, you know.
So Katie needs to tell you a little bit about her own childhood and growing up in this interesting milieu that she found herself and this ranch and
Absolutely.
Well,
So should I put up the
Katie.
picture with that? Should I put up the picture with the symptoms?
Well, first, before we get there, I just kind of want to speak to, this whole idea of ET being, bad or good or scary or angelic or all of that, because I feel, and so many, and Earl, with working in the ERT, and Kathleen Martin as well, that, and Sev talks about it too, that, you could start out with something that seems very scary and it'll turn into something that's real positive in people's lives. And I think that our experiences that we have are through our own lenses and our own perspective. So for me on the ranch, when you're 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, it's terrifying because you don't know any better. You don't know what shadow beings are. You don't know what angels are, or spirit guides, or any of, we all go through these stages of our lives where we learn and grow and explore, or at least I hope we all do. So for me, it's changed. And some people, like on the ranch, when I was filming with Beyond Skinwalker, that first night, I got this handprint on my back, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's demonic, it's scary." I didn't feel that way.
No.
I feel very guided and protected most of the time. In fact, it was a blizzard out there, and the film crews walk in, and we went over this barbed wire, and I tripped and fell forward, and I was just wearing jeans. I was not prepared for the snowstorm. And what if that maybe somebody was trying to help me, so it's through the lens in which it's
perspective. Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, I was a weird little kid, I mean, I lived with the Munsters and the Addams Family, and I didn't play with footballs and sports. I was interested in monsters, and of course I made a career out of it practically. I did in Hollywood, making monsters and beings and creatures for movies, because I loved it. I felt comforted by the dark and by shadowy beings and things. I thought they were cool, but that was just me because like I said, I was a weird kid. I still am. But I scared? Yes. Wes, thank you. Yeah, I remember it. If you get a chance to watch the movie I did back in 2018, and it's a movie, you have Whitley in it and the Von Smith, and they play themselves. It's called "But Something Is There." The film opens with my memory when I was 6 years old in San Francisco, and I woke up to a vacuum, no sound, 47th Avenue, right by the beach, no sound, and beams of light coming through the window. And I was so fascinated by this because I was the kind of kid I was interested in science and all these things, but I still got on my hands and knees and snuck along the edge of the wall so I wouldn't be in the light, because I thought something was out there trying to see me. And the minute I looked over the edge of the windowsill and it saw me, that's when I got scared, like Omo. And I went and hid under my desk, and somehow the lights gone in my room. And that whole scene, that whole experience is reenacted. We rebuilt my bedroom as a set. And if you get a chance to see that,
I wrote it down so I can watch it.
Yeah, it's the director's cut that you want to see. There's 2 versions out there, but the director's cut's on our YouTube channel, and I prefer that one. So, but yeah, so there were, I can't say I wasn't frightened by the things that were happening. And even when I started going to Avon during the 90s, when it was so prolific, like it's starting to be again, it was scary, definitely. But I always felt, like you said, protected, and that there was something important to all this, and it wasn't a negative thing.
Right. And it's interesting what you just mentioned, Steve, that it kind of ebbs and flows, and it's almost like you could turn it on and turn it off like a switch. Or sometimes, like, the more research and investigating I do, it amps up the activity. So how does all that work, and why does that work like that? I don't know. I guess maybe it's that old adage, if you're in a dark cave and whatever you shine your flashlight on or bring your attention to, it's it's going to shine or peak up. So I've had that experience as well. It's pretty cool.
If you poke at the phenomena, it pokes back.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what I tell all my field investigators.
Right,
that's actually famous.
It's true,
and more people are starting to use it. You started a movement.
Good, it's true.
So poke at it. Please poke at it, because
I do.
Yeah,
human race needs to know.
It scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to work. I tried CE5, but I wasn't going to, pay anybody to do it. And I did it myself. And I said, if you want my DNA, go ahead. If that's the cost of the ticket, go for it. And they did that. It's like, they were taking massive amounts of blood is what is what it was.
Right.
And I was scared to death, but yet I asked for it, and maybe I would have specified differently, in my little personal CE5 I did 10 years ago, Valiant Thor specifically. I want to meet Val Thor, right? But no, I didn't specify. But you know what I think? Okay, is if you become a Shaolin monk in Zen Buddhism, when you're an acolyte, you go into a room and they blindfold you. You get on your knees, and the monk goes in there and he hits you between the shoulder blades with a wooden sword, the blunt end of a sword. It's it represents death of the old, and but it's the new life is coming up ahead. And I think that for many of us, we had presuppositions about what this phenomenon was. And, the good space people, they're going to save us from ourselves and fix everything on Earth. And they want us to do it. It's the hard road that they want us to take. They want us to be worthy to join this cosmic community, I believe. And we're not ready for prime time. So, and sometimes you need that wake up of that Shaolin sword between the shoulder blades, and that's what it was for me. It scared the hell out of me. Yeah,
you remember?
But yes,
that's
I mean, that Gene pulled stuff all the time from Buddhism, and I mean,
I know
Mr.
Roddenberry. Yes,
he was amazing.
That's a good New Year's I was gonna say that's a good New Year's ritual for everybody to do right now. Get on your knees, whack, start
the pain stick. Yeah, you have to do it in Klingon.
Ontological shock. Here you go, bam.
Change. Oh no,
gets your attention. I'll tell you that much.
Back to Katie. Tell us more, Katie.
Tell us more.
We're putting you on the spot.
So
that way we don't have to talk.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I'm gonna get out of here.
What? Yeah. What? Hey, come back, girl. Wait, come back. Come back.
Right, okay,
anyway, no, something that the question I have and what keeps me going every day is how much of what was happening out there in Mount Wilson Ranch and Skinwalker Ranch and a lot of these locations that have these military-esque connections, how much of it is Black Access military projects and how much of it is actual unknown, unexplained phenomena. That's what keeps me going and drives me. And through all the research I've done, and I'm like a researcher documents kind of gal. I like going to archives, maybe because I raised 5 kids. So that was my getaway, to go to these archives and hide away, shut the door and lock it and just blah, blah. But what I have found is that it seems like that it's a combination of both. I think both things were going on. Then the question became, which came first, the chicken or the egg, who caused what to happen. And again, through researching the ranch and the previous owners from like the 1800s and even going, far back to all the native tribes, well, across the country, but in Elbert County specifically, it was a very, it was, the Ute, the Cheyenne, the Comanche, the Pawnee, the Cheyenne. So it was the same with the San Luis Valley out in that area. So it goes back to the Native Americans had a lot of experiences. And then the owners that owned that property in particular, there was a guy named, was known as the Mulligan Homestead, and Dick Mulligan, who later became a caretaker for Winter Park Ski Resort. If you read, you can Google Dick Mulligan Winter Park Ski Resort. And he said he was an Irishman born in Kiowa, and he had the gift of bold exaggeration and the gift of gab. And I'm thinking to myself, well, he was born and raised on that ranch property. I don't think he was exaggerating. I think he was trying to share with people what he experienced. And they're like going, oh, Dick, you're so funny or whatever. So through my research, I think it came first, the high strangeness activity, and then bring in the military. And in the mid to late 70s, that's where Linda Moulton Howe got her start out there, she was out there in Kiowa at the ranch property. But what the listeners need to realize, I did not live on the ranch full time. I lived about 45 minutes away. My mom was dating the gentleman who lived on the ranch. So it was that whole kind of thing. She worked for United Airlines in the Denver Tech Center as a key punch operator, and met this guy, and the guy owned the ranch, which is part of the whole mystery, because the husband and wife that owned the ranch, they were separated at the time. And the wife had this strange gentleman enter from San Francisco, California, who is part of Air Defense Command. And there was a lot of interesting documents that I found speaking to possible MK Ultra things going on that property. And I think John was a part of it. I had a half brother at the time who is in Pueblo State Hospital. So we know that in the 60s and 70s, they were using people in state hospitals to conduct some of these black access projects. And I don't know if that's where the link to my family comes in, but I mean, it's interesting stuff, and it goes deep. So,
and they were taking us kids at night too.
I
don't know
believe
if you know
that
about that or not.
Yeah,
Did you,
and they were the Tall White documentary. Yes, I have, and I'll get to my comments about that in a minute. But they were also very interested in not only children, but trauma in children. So, you know, how that affects people, and having the half brother that I did. I don't want to get into all the dramatic, painful trauma of my childhood, but I had a half brother who was diagnosed schizophrenic, and he was an arsonist. So he burnt down 2 of our homes. I mean, there was a lot of like traumatic stuff. And was I being pulled out? Because I remember being pulled out in groups in elementary school for trauma groups, you know, divorce. My father was an alcoholic. Sorry, guys. But it's the truth. It's what I dealt with. So is that a piece of the puzzle too, is trauma in children? And so it's a really weird kind of thing. So
were you ever given those? Were you ever given those hearing tests? Do you remember anything about those?
I do. And I also remember
the tones?
being told, yes, all the time. But every week I was pulled into this little room, and they told me I had speech impediments, which I don't ever recall in having a speech impediment, and, you know, learning disabilities and all these different things. And I would be pulled in to do all these kind of tests and things. I don't know if it's connected to anything or just that I was a little behind.
I believe it is.
I don't know.
Because that happened to me.
Oh,
me too.
And worse
really?
than
bubble
that,
tests. You remember the bubble tests?
Worse than that.
Yeah. Grade school. Over and over again. Yeah.
Men came in the night more than once to take me out of the house in a car and take me to school I was going to at the time in San Francisco. Near the Presidio, and the school was all dark, and we were taking downstairs where the cafeteria was and everything into the long hallways, and the rooms, some of them were lit up dimly, and there were kids standing there in their night clothes, and we were being ushered into rooms and checked out by doctors, and then shown disturbing videos so that they could, or not videos, they were films back then being projected. Looking back on it, I believe that the films were being showed visitors and other strange things, and they were trying to see, because I think that they knew that we were all being engaged by the visitors, and all those kids there, they were trying to study, because our military and our government really doesn't have a conversation with them because they weren't invited. We were.
Right.
And this drives them up the walls. And Whitley wrote about this too in Solving the Communion Enigma. Other people have had this experience too, where we were called special kids, and then we'd be pulled out of classrooms. We'd be pulled out of our homes at night and in our beds. It's like our parents knew what was going on. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they were under some sort of control that I'm not aware of. But these things happened. They definitely happened.
It's interesting too, and maybe Earl, you could speak to this a little bit, but in talking with experiencers and people that have these occurrences, a lot of them come from traumatic backgrounds or divorced parents or latchkey kids or something. Yeah, latchkey kids. So they could, in a way, I don't know if it allowed them to have more access to you or control over you or what that was about. But have you seen that same thing, Earl and Steve?
Yeah, well, my family was certainly not the Brady Bunch, you know. It was a constant fight between my mom and my dad. And you know, my mom came from this real interesting background. and she
Right.
married my dad, who was, you know, a really, really kind man at heart, but he was very, very religious. And I think that it made my mom angry, because he was the kind of guy, you know, he wouldn't just say, hello, how are you? It was always, you know, God bless you, you know, Jesus bless you, you know, and but no, it was a constant argument, constant fight. And now I went and I gave like a little lecture in front of my, you know, fourth grade class, and told national secrets, as Katie and Steve both know. You know, my mom worked with Howard Hughes back in the 1950s, and back in 1963, I was 5 years old. My mom sat me down and we had this conversation where she told me about how, you know, I mean, I think that she was reacting to the fact that every day I had a little morning ritual. I would go and climb up the swing set to the monkey bars, and I would wave and sing at the sky. And my mom asked, you know, out the kitchen window, who are you waving and singing to? And I said, the space people, Mom. And she, you know, my mom had worked in an underground facility for Hughes, and she was pregnant with me during the last 9 months that she worked there. She worked right up until, she said, it was like a week before I was born. I think that she made a connection there, and she wondered, maybe, Earl, there's some connection, maybe something happened. I don't know what she thought, because we never talked about that really about me personally. But she wanted me to know that we weren't alone. And so I went and I gave this lecture in front of my fourth grade class, and I know the officialdom knows about it, because I had a guy from the DOD actually say out loud to me, he said, you know, I've read your mother's file, and you went and told national secrets in front of a bunch of 10-year-olds when you were a kid, didn't you? You know, I know. It's not the first time I've been called a troublemaker, Steve. But you know, that's sort of my life, and I think that my mom knew that there was something different about me. I just was teased to death. You know, I was the kid that, you know, literally, you know, bullies would wait at each diametrically situated gate of the school in junior high school to make sure that somebody was going to beat me up at the end of the day. And I hated to fight, because I felt every blow that I delivered.
Sure.
I felt it myself, you know. I guess I'm an empath from birth, maybe. And I hated it above all things. I didn't want to harm people or fight, even in defense of myself, but yet I'd have to, you know. And it was like that for years. And I think that those of us that have gotten, whatever you want to call this, calling or this touch from the ineffable, that it sort of set us apart. And it doesn't surprise me that I got the bubble tests with, you know, I wasn't the only one. You know,
they were
there were a few
onto us.
kids.
They sense it.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens in the animal kingdom too. I'll never forget, my mom raised Shetland sheepdogs, and there was this one dog that was born in the litter, and it was blind, and they tried to kill it because they knew it was different. And that's what animals do, and we are animals.
Right.
We are the great apes. We're primates, and so
the monkey cage.
We have innate instincts that we can act on, and maybe don't even know we're doing it at times. But unfortunately, it seems that the lower the intelligence level is, the more susceptible people are to those innate characteristics. And I don't know if in your experience you found that 90% of the bullies were pretty much the dummies of the school, and wanted you
Some
to
of
get
them
them
came
to do
around.
homework for them because they couldn't do it
good
themselves.
friends
But that's what I
eventually,
found.
you know.
But one thing they knew was, if you fought back, and you fought back hard, as I did, at a cost to my health, I mean, I would go up against a whole bunch of them, and I would go at them, and eventually they just left me alone. It didn't last very long, and then it just stopped. But the people I knew that ran
I
from
joined
them,
rock bands.
There you
And
go.
then it stopped. High
You got
school,
what in
if
rock
you had a
band?
guitar around your neck, you were suddenly okay. You
Oh yeah, it's a hell of a
Katie,
weapon.
you know, if you're playing
It's
Led
great for
Zeppelin,
ruining
right?
Marshall
You know,
stacks too, let alone people. But yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Jim Boyle. Long time no see. Jim's an old
I
time.
was just going to say that. I was just going to say a lot of those kids that were so-called different and picked on became the rock stars, the artists, all that stuff, the creatives artists, in the world. Writers. So it's time to let that go.
We're the storytellers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You can peek beyond the veil.
Okay,
that's
Earl.
the difference, I think.
Earl and Steve, favorite Led Zeppelin song and favorite album, because we're all Led Zeppelin fans.
The favorite album of Zeppelin?
Yeah.
Well,
I love them. I listen to them.
Song and the album.
The song damn near died in a car wreck one night, and the Stairway to Heaven was playing in the 8-track, and that was the last words I heard. But I would have to say the first album I really liked a great deal, because up to that point I'd been listening to the Beatles and the Stones and everything, and these guys came along, and they were the first real metal artists. I mean, the truly metal. They led the way for metal, and they were awesome. So
they recorded that album in 30 hours. That first album.
I can see
the first
that.
album that has the violin.
I was in a band myself,
and all that.
Wow. Yeah. I like two.
It wasn't just you like two.
I love two. I love two as well. Yeah. I learned guitar playing along to Zeppelin too.
Oh, actually. Really? Cool. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. If you say to me tomorrow, I had to learn that suspended E. Where you put the extra finger on there and then go. Yeah. It was kind of amazing album to grow up to and learn from. Anyway, we had to go there.
I got a kick out of this one. This really made me laugh. Me, Mike, that's very funny. Okay, I'll go first. And it's simple, really. 99.999999% of all the videos you're seeing that mainstream media are showing you are drones. They're ours. Mm-hmm. They're aircraft. They're airplanes. I mean, they misidentify a 747 coming in for a landing every single time. The bright lights in the front, those are the landing lights. Gear are down. Red and green nav lights, anti-collision lights, strobe lights, if you like. Being an aviator, I call them what they are. It's so obvious, and these people are misidentifying them, and I think the networks know it, and they're showing them anyway. And then the network itself goes out, like ABC, and they say, look, we're out here and we got one on camera. And it's Venus, and their camera's out of focus, and I can tell because I can see the shape of their lens, the iris of their lens, and it's so typical. And they're telling the public this is a drone, this is an unknown, and we're so excited. Yeah. Now, here comes the clincher.
Yes.
Mary and I have been watching very closely for the last several weeks the videos that the media doesn't want you to see. And these are clearly not drones. These are clearly UFOs, not UAPs, not drones, not unmanned vehicles, UFOs. And some of them are clearly saucers and V formations flying and just accelerating incredible speeds and disappearing. The usual everyday stuff that we're used to seeing. Triangles, all of it. The media is not showing you that stuff. And of course, now we have the fogs, the convenient fogs that are appearing when this activity is going on. So
people are getting sick.
We're being gaslighted.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
The next,
and, there's the best explanation that I've heard so far was it was actually on John Greenwald's X platform, and there was a guy that worked for a company that actually manufactured components for these drones that the DoD has, that they had built to sniff out dirty bombs. And we first apparently sent them to the Ukraine. And my guess is, and even Lou Elizondo mentioned this, love him or hate him. I like Lou personally, but that perhaps we've had a threat of a dirty bomb. And if we did, that would explain why they're flying these gamma ray smelling drones. They can catch that before it explodes. It's not like a nuke. I mean, it's just nuclear material, radioactive, and a regular bomb, and it spreads this material and harms people. And it would explain why we're seeing the visitors popping into these situations as well. Because if you want to see the visitors, you want to see aliens, well, just start talking about nuclear stuff, whether weapons or nuclear energy. They'll pop in. We see it all the time. So that's my feeling.
And it would also explain why they're not being upfront with us about that, because it would spread panic. But I'm going to say the unpopular, controversial thing right here, because I kind of just do that. But I don't know about the rest of you. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm a little.
I could be wrong.
I'm a little nervous about the fog, the mysterious drones, the secrets that are going on, because I'm a little bit nervous that something big's going to happen before Trump takes office. I still think there might be something in the works that could be big. President Trump. Right. Exactly. I know. That's what I'm saying. Love him or hate him. I don't necessarily, it doesn't matter what you think about it.
I'm not even going to go there. This is a show about.
I'm just afraid I just think some of that might be moving towards something happening before that.
There are mass sightings happening. Katie, they're mass.
Whatever it is,
they're clearly not our thing.
It's ramping up,
and this is a distraction.
Yeah.
They if from their perspective, if these visitors keep showing up more and more in the sky, they're terrified about losing control, and it's all about control. So the more they can mislead us, misdirect us, and gaslight us, they're going to do it. Wow. Thank you. And how do I pronounce her? Regine. That's what I thought. I'm so always worried. I'm so lame. If I see George,
I could be wrong.
David, I know how to pronounce those names.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's what the bell is for. I've had people complain that who are new to the show and don't understand how we do things here. Is a lot of us are all friends and we're all very used to each other, and sometimes we speak over each other, and sometimes people like Regine just did contribute to the well-being of our show of Breaking the Silence, which we greatly appreciate, and I will ring a bell to thank them. So we're not trying to be rude. We're trying to be quite the opposite. We're trying to be thankful, very thankful, because we work on we don't even have a shoestring to work on. So and we spend all our own money on camera equipment and professional camera equipment and sound equipment, everything else to make the documentaries we make. We produce professional quality documentaries about people who have these experiences, and we don't lead them, and we let them look at the camera and tell their story. And then I do what they call my magic with my years and years of experience in Hollywood doing visual effects. That's to awesome. Try to bring this stuff to life for people that we experience all the time.
That's great. Thank you for doing that. It's much needed.
It is.
You're very welcome. It's a lot of hard
work. And Mary and Steve's motives are impeccable. And I don't work with just anybody. And I have no.
You don't?
There's no quantity at all. I'm very, very picky. But their heart is in the right place, and it's about we are disclosure. That's what we are. We are. I don't think the government is disclosure. I don't even think that ETs themselves. It's us. It's up to us. That's what we're doing, kids. So,
So, Katie, did you see the Netflix show on the Manhattan encounter? That 3-part or 4-part show that was on Netflix. It was about Bud Hopkins and about that case,
Linda Cortile thing,
which had multiple witnesses seeing her outside of her window going up into the sky and everything else, and they just made a mockery of it. It was horrible, and this is so typical of media. Now, I've worked in Hollywood all my life in media, and I've seen it all, and there's some good people out there. One of the shows that sticks out to my mind in the 90s was Sightings. They were very, very good about how they presented the material, and I worked for them and reenacted and did effects for them. But it's very rare. Overall, all they want to do is exploit you, make you laughable, and get ratings. And they've done that with that. They did it. Poor Travis Walton. It was just terrible what they did with his story. And so that was a real motivator for Mary and I to say, hey, you know, Steve, you worked in the business, you know how to make film, you're a filmmaker. Why don't we go up against this and do this the right way and give people a chance? And being an experiencer myself, I understand what it's like. Most of the people producing programs on this subject matter do not.
Well, they certainly made that case very controversial. And I think, you know, entertainment and controversy sells views. You know, I don't know, but yeah, it's not good what they're doing. Making a mockery of people.
Thank you again. I have no interest in sightings. Well, if you never saw it, then you won't know. It was very well done at the time. That show. So
yeah, it was a good show.
Anyway,
very good show.
Let's
I mean,
move
you know,
on.
there are good shows, but
yeah.
Yes.
Let's move on and talk about the ranch and what you researched there, Katie.
All right.
You can share with us.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that happened out there. One of the very first things that was experienced when they first purchased the ranch, first of all, that ranch sat vacant for over 10 years. But there were rumors within the community. So Kiowa is in Elbert County, Colorado, and it is a very rural place, but they had these patches of ponderosa pine. So you'd have it where it's kind of open and then patches of forest, right? And this activity wasn't just occurring on that one particular ranch property. It was occurring from Franktown to Elizabeth to Kiowa to Rama to Simla, very much across the whole county and even into bordering counties. We have the Palmer Divide right there. It's very much like the Archuleta Mesa. So it's a high magnetism. Right where the ranch property sits in my childhood, though, we have two aquifers that come together. So I feel like these high magnetism places that have certain geological commonalities play a role in this as well. But for one of the first things reported out there were these strange hums, much like the Taos hum, bangs underground, which kind of talks, to Earl's point and what your mom experienced. Were there like maglev trains underneath? Were there tunnelings going from, let's say, the Dulce area through Colorado Springs over to where the new DIA at the time we had Stapleton Airport? So there's that going on. We had Sasquatch creatures, which my mom called white fuzzies because they were like big, like gray hair.
Yeah, I saw the picture of the footprint in the snow. That was at Mount Wilson Ranch, which was interesting because Jeff McBurney, who owns Mount Wilson Ranch right now with his wife Knick-Knack, they're just such awesome people. They're so cool. And so they're taking us to this cave on the Mount Wilson property. And he said the same thing. He's back standing in the cave. And he said he felt like there was a maglev train. And this is really close to Area 51. And so he felt like his whole body vibrating, and we kicked on the cave and it sounds hollow underneath. So, but when we're walking up to that cave area, we see these strange footprints in the snow. They're relatively close together. So I don't know if it's a Sasquatch type creature, which Jeff said they've never had encounters of that before. It was very unusual because they just sort of, just like at Elbert County on Beyond Skinwalker, they came out of nowhere because it's snow on the ground. So you see these prints just show up and then disappear into nowhere else, if there's maybe a portal or something. So it was like a juvenile Sasquatch, I don't know. Yeah. It certainly wasn't a bear. It wasn't deer. It was, you can rule out all the things it wasn't. I have that picture, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe a listener out there will have an idea, but it was very strange.
Hang on here. They've changed things on there it is, media. Recently they changed how they were doing things in StreamYard, so I was getting reaccustomed with it. I think there's a picture. That's one of the pictures you sent me, I thought, Earl.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of pictures here. Should I start showing these and you can comment on them?
Yeah, sure. And may as well, if you don't mind, I would love to talk about Mount Wilson Ranch, our
Okay.
moment of synchronicity.
Right.
Okay.
Katie,
Mount Wilson
maybe
Ranch.
you would
Okay.
like to talk about that.
Well, it was cool.
Let's
Yeah.
go back to Contact in the Desert.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, this is Mount Wilson Ranch, and you can see the power pole right there. This is where they're kind of digging underground. But the synchronicity, we're up there at Contact in the Desert on a panel. I believe it was the Hollywood. Was it the Hollywood
Disclosure
Alliance panel?
Alliance.
Disclosure
Yeah.
Alliance panel, right?
Stan
And
Harare's panel. Yep.
right. And I'm listening to Earl tell a story about his mom, and that she worked for Howard Hughes in this underground facility. Well, just a few months before, I was visiting Mount Wilson Ranch, and we're trying to connect dots to Elbert County, and that whole aviary group with Bob Bigelow and Linda. I mean, all the whole group of them, right? And we're trying to connect these dots and who does what. But a lot of people didn't know that when Bob Bigelow owned the Skinwalker Ranch, he also owned Mount Wilson Ranch. And so I went there and did some investigating and exploring and research with Jeff McBurney and Mount Wilson Ranch, just trying to connect these dots. And he's telling us about this runway that Howard Hughes owned. In fact, Pioche, Nevada, which is right there by Mount Wilson Ranch, Howard Hughes owned that town. Okay. And he would fly in and out of basically the runway. It just curves right to Mount Wilson Ranch. And even Jeff said there was an old army barracks there. Just a lot of strange things. And as they're digging, like that picture shows there, so he never understood why that power pole just ended right there in this weird place. And they started pulling up these very ornate, like lamps, concrete lamps. And that's the other thing. Howard Hughes has a connection with the concrete companies out there. But I don't know if, weird stuff all over the ranch. And you can still see the runway on Google Earth. You can see that it's still cut out. But he believes there's this underground facility at Mount Wilson Ranch, and they're pulling these things out from underground that are very ornate and like you're in France or something.
My mom
and so I'm
called it
a little city underground. And I'm listening to Earl's story, and under the table, I'm like going, pick me, pick me, pick me. I think I know where this might be. Because I think it's at Mount Wilson Ranch. So it was so cool to kind of make that connection with Earl and with Jeff McBurney and Mount Wilson Ranch and Howard Hughes. And that's on the bucket list. I want to go to the Eisenhower library out there in Kansas and pull some files on Howard Hughes. Because I don't know what he experienced in his life or even out there at Mount Wilson, but could that have contributed to, his spiral of isolation later in his life? I don't know. It's a fascinating story.
It is. Yes. So I've heard rumors that he may be Bigelow may be the illegitimate son of Howard Hughes, and it's interesting. Once I heard that
story is getting out there a little.
You look at their pictures.
Yeah, they're very it's who knows, so
might explain the interest,
they're
certainly similar types
and the money.
So what do we have here?
That was just when I was just I was hiking around the property. It was a big metal rod. Now I don't know if that was there for the filming of Beyond Skinwalker, and then they just had left it there for some reason, but it was kind of in the middle of nowhere. I don't know what it was used for. I just took a picture of it because it was just strange to be there. It was strange. It wasn't too far away from like these underground, so maybe it was something to do with blasting when they were blasting out there. I'm not sure. This is up where we saw the footprint. So as we're walking to the cave, so first of all, that yellow tape, Jeff's like, what is that yellow tape doing there? It was strange, but this was almost like some sort of a ritualistic, somebody had put these rocks here and there was this skull in the center of it. And what was strange about it, because this is private property and Jeff had not seen it up there before. And then you have those weird prints right to the left of where that was as we're walking to the cave. So I just grabbed a quick picture of that.
Okay.
Again, stuff they're digging out underground, piles of stuff,
Why would they hide all this stuff? I mean, they buried all this stuff.
Right.
Like they tried to make it go away. Yeah. If there's my guess is maybe there was, my mom talked about it being a shack that took her out to with a little security detail, and that they had to unlock this thing, and that there was an elevator inside of that shack. And she got in this elevator, and she thought maybe it was going down a floor or two. They didn't tell her what to expect. And she got scared because it was going at quite a clip. And she mentioned, a mile under the surface is where this thing, finally the doors opened up. And she said there was a little city down there, and lots of German rocket scientists. She mentioned Werner von Braun, who is apparently a friend and her colleague. She would talk very highly of him. That's my friend Werner. He would be on The Wonderful World of Disney or something, and she spoke very
I watched it
favorably
all the time,
of him.
religiously.
Yeah, me too. Wonderful World of Color is what it's called.
So the city was the city
Katie
describing, was it constructed underground, or was it? What I experienced was a huge cave. I mean, it was like a huge dome underground.
I don't know.
On the
she
floor,
said they got around in golf carts. So it was big.
The floor was built on the buildings were built on the floor of this cave. It's like they had hollowed out this huge area, and I heard Willie's Jeeps. I heard Jeeps.
Well, there's natural caverns under there. There's a natural cavern, and my guess is that maybe they utilized something like that. My mom's best friend, her name was Ellen Severson, and she worked for the Rand Corporation. And speaking with Richard Souter, who's kind of an expert on military deep underground military bases, he said that a lot of our facilities were built along the Rand Corporation and the Army Corps of Engineers, and they would do all the cement work and stuff. But Ellen we called her Aunt Ellen, very, very brilliant woman, but she had like a sort of an act that she put on in public, like the dumb blonde thing, but get her alone, and she was just this very, kind of astute and eloquent person. And I kind of joked with her a lot about that later on. She knew I knew. But Mom said that they had stuff like a bowling alley, and they had like a cafe that had umbrellas over the tables, like a French cafe, because people were down there for long periods of time. And she said, I even there was a barber, but you could do my hair for me. Here's a picture of Mom, with her, she always liked to have the do's with her hair. And I figured later on, she told me this when I was 5, but as I got older, it was like, well, you're not going to go a mile under the desert to have your hair done. She must have spent a lot of time down there.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it will be very interesting. I mean, I'm planning on going out to Mount Wilson Ranch and do a little bit of investigating. I'm hoping we can coordinate with Katie, and I have to go there.
Now, is this by Mount Wilson? We know. Is this by the Mount Wilson?
This is in Nevada. It's sort of it's Nevada. In Nevada.
What I know
kind
is
of close to Area 51.
Is. Yeah.
Do you have the picture of the? Do you have the picture of the ornate? It almost looks like that's up getting close to the cave entrance right there. There we are going into the cave. Yep, that's Jeff McBurney and I going into the cave. And taking
that doesn't
down
look like a natural cave to me.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And then you kick it and it's hollow.
Not a natural cave, is it?
Is that a doorway into something? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
There's a shot from Mount Wilson of the Howard Hughes runway airstrip out there.
Airstrip.
That's what's left of it.
Yeah.
That used to be probably.
And there's a pole for the windsock that's still there.
Yeah, you can see the windsock.
Gotta have a windsock.
Yeah.
Wow. So that runway goes downhill and then uphill. It's really interesting. So. Okay, so
there's the part of the ornate. I think there's another shot where you can see the details because it is so detailed, these things. Yeah, look at that.
Look at that.
Why? Yeah, they're pulling that up underground there in the middle of Nevada in the desert. It's so
they're pulling
strange.
that out from underground.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. I don't see the Bigfoot picture here. Did you send
there's
that to me?
I
What's
thought
left of the
so.
winds?
I might.
That is the windsock there that's out there at the runway, and the length of the runway sign.
Can't believe it's
original
still
out there.
standing. Wow.
Yeah.
So the runway is completely, it's not smooth anymore. It's all overgrown. And
No, it's still pretty open. If you walk around there, you can definitely see that it's still
I'm just wondering if you could
runway.
land on it still, without nosing over and breaking your prop.
I would say so. Earl, I can send you that picture if you can get it up. The prints
I
in the
thought I
snow.
had it.
Oh,
No,
that's the book I wrote, and this is all about
Oh.
the Rocky Mountain Ranch. That came about because in Hunt for the Skinwalker, I learned of 3 PhDs that did the original investigation out there. And Dr. Leo Sprinkle, PhD out of Laramie, Wyoming, was one of them. And this is where he has all his archive housed. So if anybody's out in Laramie, Wyoming, and you have a couple extra days, please visit the American Heritage Center out there. It's like the one building in Laramie, Wyoming that looks like a teepee. But he has over 75 boxes of his research of over 40 years with experiencers and hypnosis. And you can even read letters from people like Phil Klass and Linda Howe. It's really cool. So I spent 3.5 years going back and forth visiting with Leo before he passed away and just going through people's letters. And it came to me in a dream one night. Dr. Leo Sprinkle would sign his letters, Love and Light Leo, hence the name of the book. And I just thought, if I find these things interesting, other people will as well. Like I found letters that predates like the 1975 Travis Walton experience in Snowflake, Arizona. There was a preacher who was on a bus that had an experience way before Travis Walton did. There's the Francis Warren report, which Francis Warren military base out there in Cheyenne. That's a case. I don't know why it doesn't have more attention than it does, because this is a fascinating case where they are tracking these things on radar. You have multiple witnesses, airmen and women, that witness these things. And not only did it happen once, but it's happened 3 times, these mass sightings out there at Francis E. Warren. And those drones, speaking of drones, we had a big wave of them out in northeast Colorado, kind of close to that Wyoming, Francis Warren, the state line. And I'm wondering if it's connected to Francis Warren as well. And that was never solved either. Those drones, all these years later, what, it's been 5 years ago now. We had Colorado Bureau of Investigations involved. We had the FBI involved. Same thing like now, right? It was like a big deal. What's going on with these crazy drones? We still don't know. No answers.
No.
So when I see these drones going now, I'm like, we're not going to know. We'll have to move on and forget.
Well, I love a mystery.
Tell me about this.
Leo Sprinkle. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, no, this is something fascinating. So I personally never saw ETs in my life, but when I went to the archives, the image on the right, the one with the tubes out, it looks like he has a helmet. This was sketched, and they were said that there were 2 types of ETs on this ranch property: the blonde, blue-eyed Nordics, and these called Tubi guys. And I got that from Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti interviewed me, and he labeled them the Tubi guys. Well, what's interesting is, so I had this drawing, and I kind of stuck it in my back pocket, put it in the drawers. I didn't share it with anybody for a very long time. And at the time, I was the guest speaker coordinator for Colorado MUFON. And I invited a gentleman by the name of Sean Bartok, who wrote a book called Flashbacks. And in the book, he said his property is in Castle Rock, Colorado, which he protected the actual place. The actual place was only 14 miles away from our experience, the ranch of my childhood. And I'm sitting in the 3rd row watching his presentation, and up comes that other drawing. And those tubes in the neck, he said, came out. So the second drawing, the tubes are out. And my jaw was on the floor, because I'm like, holy cow, 14 miles away, all in the 70s. He's experiencing this. And I'm just going to say it. It's in Franktown, right? And we're in Kiowa. And it's the same wrinkles, the same shape eyes, the same weird tubes. I mean, that blew my mind. That really blew my mind. And I'm
Wow.
finding that happening over and over and over again. So just recently, see the tubes in the neck. I don't know if you have that second drawing that he drew where they come out. So they look like the same kind of tubes.
No,
I
I
don't
don't.
think I ever
they're all
had that one.
But even the
I
shape
didn't
of the
have that
head.
one.
Yeah, but even the shape of the head
We'll
is
just look
quite
at Earl
similar.
instead.
So yeah, they said
tubes coming off his chin.
I hope no resemblance.
It's interesting about the wrinkles. That's interesting
Yeah.
about the wrinkles. I don't know if you watched Seb Talk's short little piece she sent us, and we turned into a film where she talks about her experience. But the gray that she saw was not really gray skin colored, and it had a lot of wrinkles up on top of its head that were very similar to that. And I've heard this described before. In fact, Camille described the little beings that were low to the table, and she said tops of their heads were all wrinkly, because I had to reenact or reproduce that image that she experienced as an animation. And I've heard it a lot from a lot of people.
Yeah. In the report, they're described as looking pathetic. Pathetic. And what's interesting to me, so the two types were said to be in conflict with one another, and something really peculiar that I personally experienced that were these strange, mysterious boxes. And there's other cases like the Carl Higdon case out there in 1974 in Medicine Bow, Wyoming. Trey Hudson down south had this huge, bigger box, but these boxes are coming up. And even so, just recently, I'm doing a big, and that's what I'll be presenting on at Contact in the Desert this year, is all the new Snippy research, Snippy the horse, which was America's first well-known, documented, the newspapers took it viral for the day.
Yes, I remember Snippy the horse.
Yeah, and it is Snippy.
Yes,
it's
Snippy.
not Lady.
It's appropriate name.
Right.
I know there was some controversy about that, but the name is
not
almost
anymore.
too appropriate.
No. Yeah, and that's what I'm
poor
excited
Snippy
about.
got snippied,
Yeah, no, that the name came way before the incident, and that's what I'm excited about, because I get to share all these documents that nobody had laid eyes on for over 35 years. So, and it reveals the truth. And I have my hands on the two only known photos of Snippy alive, and we'll be sharing that. And there's just so much information, so it's super cool. But I brought Snippy up because there too, as we're researching this, there's a box connection, there's a hum connection, there's orb connections. The things that were going on in the San Luis Valley in 1967, and there's even some Lonnie Zamora comparisons and connections, but to Elbert County, it's blowing my mind that what they experienced out there in the San Luis Valley almost is identical to Elbert County. So what is all that about? And a lot of that I didn't know. So I'm super excited to share all this new information at Contact for the first time. Yeah. And a book will be out too about that as well. Yeah. I'm excited about that.
Awesome.
Right.
Okay.
But
can I say synchronicity, people, go for it.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that people think that this phenomenon has changed, and but it's always been weird, and it's always been high strangeness, and it's always been multiple strange beings. They don't all look the same. We were texting about this a little bit earlier today, Katie, where and this is the beauty of Steve, that he will get such detailed reports from experiencers, and I've seen him do it. And he'll ask these very detailed questions. Most people, they just have their standard gray, right? The black eyes, the slit fur mouth, two nostrils, bleh. But Steve will ask these very, very, he'll ask what the feet looked like. Did you see the feet? How many fingers? Was the skin rough? Was the skin smooth? Because some have wrinkles, some have, there's some hybridization and cross mating probably, between races out there. It's not unusual. That's the norm apparently. So it's not just one race, two races, three races.
Yeah, for me,
there's a lot of stuff going on.
It's mostly been what looked like grace. And of course, there's this very tall one that's very female, that's been with me all my life. and it's
Yeah.
been consistent. But on a couple of occasions, and only briefly, like for instance, I saw this, and it was
Wow.
sitting next to me on a table, and I wasn't at home or anything. I was definitely somewhere where it was all metal, and the table was metal and cold that I was sitting on. Funny thing about that metal is it's not real hard; it's soft. But anyway, I'm sitting on it, and I know there's something next to me. I look over and I see this. I illustrated it the next morning, and for Yvonne,
Wow.
and I looked at it and I tried to get off the table. I very slowly started to move away from it, because it was very disturbing. And it put its leg out and wrapped it around my bare leg. And I could feel the rough texture of its skin. And I heard it say, "Where do you think you're going? You're not going anywhere." And then I blacked out after that. But I got a really good
Oh
look
my
at it.
goodness.
And I drew
Wow.
that. So
Wow.
and I did see a
And
My
praying
it's
guy, I
mantis
mean,
special
you
for the
got
too.
first
them.
time not too long ago.
My guy's is the smooth skin, almost right to
Yeah.
the skull, kind of, and like dolphin skin because they were touching me, and it was cold, But yeah, it was kind of that look right there. The
Well,
chin
that's
is a
what I'm
little
used
more
to seeing
pointed
right
there
there.
too.
And that's one
My
of the
guys,
small ones who are very childlike and
yeah,
very
these
kind
were
of have this
small. Yeah.
there's this innocence about them. Thank you. God, thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Well, that was what
Yeah,
was weird for me is that it seemed like, I mean, if I could have
that's a
moved,
Hollywood gray.
I could have harmed them, but they definitely, they paralyzed me. I was scared, but I couldn't move. I could move my eyes. I couldn't yell. I couldn't,
Well, oh,
and
they
I wasn't afraid after. I noticed gifts, and this is what it seems like, whether people have what a seemingly benevolent or a seemingly malevolent experience, they're left with the same gifts. It seems to flip a switch for us. Like being an alien is something that's contagious. It brings up a person's empathy levels. Your telepathy is brought up to a notch. And for myself, the synchronicities became very, very powerful. Those are beautiful images, Steve. He's so
well, that's actually
talented.
just a frame grab from one of the animations I did about when I was a
Yeah,
kid.
I've seen that one.
My grandparents and I were stopped on the road by people in hard hats, and they took us into the forest. And
I
there was
love
this
that
big,
one.
yeah. But that was that tall one that I'm so used to. So you have a
Yeah,
question,
Hanson,
too?
they're asking you about. He's a
yeah.
nice guy,
So
actually. I like him.
he's a tall guy. He's a tall guy. No, I
Yes, he
like
is a tall guy.
I like Ben a lot, and I was fortunate enough to work with him on UFO Witness, and just a nice guy, nice crew, nice time. At the time, it's interesting. I kind of feel bad about it a little bit because I think we filmed that just right after COVID. But I didn't have access to the Elbert County Ranch property at the time. In fact, when you see that season 1, episode 3, Rocky Mountain Ranch, that was my first time back on that property. What had happened was I left, they have a box outside of the gate because it's a gated property. I left a note explaining who I was and my connection. And I didn't know if they were experiencing anything. They're the people who bought it right after, the family I'm connected with. And I didn't know if they knew the history. And so I didn't want to just call them on the phone. I guess it's this now. It's not like that. And like, oh, by the way, blah, So
Yeah.
COVID happened. Everything was shut down. And I wanted to meet them like at a restaurant face to face and bring the reports, all the documents and everything. And what happened, instead of that, I get a call from Beyond Skinwalker that they had contacted them. I had made them aware of the case. And so they set it up. So the first time back at the property and meeting the people that live there was cameras rolling, which was really unnerving for me because it's been over, 50 years since I'd been out there as a kid. And I didn't know what they experienced, what they knew, if things were still happening. So it was kind of like a lot of pressure in a way. But what I've come to find out since all that, the season 3 will be out soon because we did 1, 2, and now 3's coming out. Being able to do that, I've gotten to meet more locals And this stuff's still going on. Recent mutilations,
Yeah.
tons of paranormal stuff,
Yeah.
these strange box encounters, strange UFO sightings with these elk hunters. I think there's an elk connection, interestingly enough, like in the Carl Higdon case. Fascinating stuff. Just
What
really
about
crazy.
What's with the boxes?
Yeah, the boxes. I don't know. I was at Laughlin, so I'll tell you my experience with the box, which was in the daytime. But in the report, several adults witnessed these boxes. And even in the report for Elbert County, the people that were living there, I could say all the adults are now dead. It was Jack, John, and Betty. They used pseudonyms in the report, but their real names were Jack, John, and Betty. And so all three of these people and friends that they've had visit the ranch often, which is also interesting with the MK Ultra stuff, because John talked about using legal LSD. And we know that military were experimenting with a drug called FM, which is freaking magic. Okay. So that was happening, but they had, the freaking word. And they said they would have vagrants and strange people just come to the ranch. Why is that happening? And they talked about a guy named Warren, his last name was redacted out, visits the ranch, felt something wrong, something took over his mind, made him walk towards the woods, would release him, and he would run back, and this did this to him 5 times. So a lot of these people saw these boxes, and in the report it says that the ETs told him these boxes were lethal, and they demonstrated that by having a Sasquatch creature approach the box, and it took it to its knees. Something that is interesting to me are these Sasquatch, are they workers, bodyguards, the ETs themselves in connection with the UFOs? They were blacked out helicopters, but my box encounter, it was Jack and the youngest son and myself. It was during the day. We stopped at this little outbuilding, which was something that was cool for me on Beyond Skinwalker, because the owners of the ranch were sharing pictures of when they bought it. The way I remembered, ooh, what was that sound? Anyway, I just
that's my stomach growling. Actually,
okay. Woo,
I have my dinner is in the fridge. I know. I was hoping it didn't pick that up, but that was literally.
It is getting close to dinner time. Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll make this quick then. But
I think it's okay.
I remember stopping at this outbuilding, which wasn't there.
It's a Sasquatch, maybe.
Yeah. Greg showed me the picture. He's like, this outbuilding, because we knocked it down. I'm like, that's it. So anyway, we stopped at this little outbuilding, got some things, put them in the truck, and we were driving around the Ponderosa Pines and back at the ranch house. He pulls over the truck, and hovering off the ground 3.5-4 feet is this box like this. It's a box. It was lit from within. It had a hum sound to it, like a bee sound, like if you're standing under, like it was black, but it also was illuminated. And I just remember Jack yelling at me and the youngest son, who's still alive, and I don't want to disclose his name. All the boys live out of state, and they won't talk about what happened out there. But he's like, get in the truck. It's a box. We jump in the truck. Wow. I look back, and that box was gone. So I don't know what's up with these boxes. I had a woman come up to me after a conference in Laughlin where I was speaking, and because in interviewing ranchers that had mutilations in the past, one of the most interesting ones I had was a woman who her family kind of pioneered in the town of Kiowa, and they have street names after them. The museums, like half the museum is about their family. But anyway, she lived in Wyoming. I drove to Wyoming, did an interview with her. Right out of high school, she gets married. They live in Rama, Colorado. Her husband's on horseback checking the cows for calves, comes across a dead calf with 4 cuts in a perfect square, but the top of the fur was removed, but the skin was still there. He gets on the horse, goes back, gets my witness. By the time they got back to that calf, she said it was 25 minutes later. They're miles off the county road, so it's not like somebody's just stopping off there. The calf had been completely mutilated, cauterized, blood drained, the whole thing. They felt like they were being watched, all that stuff. Just insane things going on there. But the box, the woman said that maybe they were like, what Sheila told me was that in the pastures where the cattle are being mutilated, they're like huddled together and calm. But then the adjoining pastures, they're like really freaked out and kind of wild. So are these boxes like doing a frequency or sound to calm and keep the cattle like that, or are they communication devices? But for some reason in my mind, I connect the boxes to the Tubi guys, not to the Nordics. And I feel like the Tubi guys are some sort of AI hybrid. That's just something in me that goes, and is that what the battle is about, where humanity's going? I had a really interesting synchronicity with Sev Talk actually on podcast when I did KGRA. She was talking about these hybrids and her marks and her experiences, and she said that they were well-oiled machines and that they were interested in a hybrid program to get more humanity back, or because we're so bipolar, right? And extreme in our emotions. And what's interesting is Dr. Leo Sprinkle put me under for an hour and a half under hypnosis. Not that I claim to have a abduction experiences, but nonetheless, he wanted to put me under. And during that session with Dr. Sprinkle, I say that they were like well-oiled machines. And me and Seb were like, what?
Wow.
I mean, the same wording. Yeah. It was
Yeah,
really, really
that happens.
strange. Yeah. Yeah.
That happens. Well, the reason I asked about the boxes because
We're all
and I noticed
connected.
in some people in the chat are talking about the black boxes, and some of them will recall the show I did about I think it was called My Birthday or something like that, where I found myself standing out underneath a street light across the street from my house in my pajamas, and this hooded thing came rushing at me and grabbed me like Superman, and we shot up into the sky and into the belly of this black disc in the sky. And one of the things that happened to me, and it was my birthday, is they took me down this long corridor. I don't think it was inside the craft. I don't even know that that was a craft. It might have been that opening to somewhere else. But they put me on a table, and one of them came over to me, and a lot of them standing around the table were human, like tall, odd-looking humans. But she came over, the tall gray, with the black box and stuck it on my chest, and it opened, and light was coming out of it. It was a bluish glowing light, and she reached down in it into me and did something, and then closed it and pulled it away again. And to this day, I don't know what was going on there. So that piqued my interest.
It's interesting that it was a blue light. Something they talk about are these blue orbs. I had one encounter with a blue basketball-sized blue orb in my bedroom that was witnessed by my ex-husband at the time because I woke him up. And I'm so glad for all those people out there that experience things. Write it down. Write it down. I don't care what it is, because I was so thankful that I did. Because what happened was my kids at the time were into Legos. So I had a red bucket of Legos and it fell over. That's what woke me up out of my sleep in the middle of the night. The auto light of the people that lived behind me, it was going on and off like that. And in the corner of my bedroom was this basketball-sized blue light. It just sitting there. And I'm like, Steve, my ex's name, Steve, wake up. And he got eyes on it, and it just went like this. It went. It was a one time I had an encounter with that. And I'm, of course, looking like, is it the light on the smoke detector? Is it the light on the TV box? Is it the
Oh, sure. You've got to rule it all out.
But it wasn't. It was just there. And I felt like it was something intelligent. And in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, they talk about these. Yeah. They say, don't assume it's from somewhere else. It could be us.
Case. Kathleen Martin has a case where a guy was healed of cancer by a blue orb, and there's a video of it, and it has a surface to it. It isn't a lens flare. It isn't a piece of dust, that's being picked up by, a bad camera. Though it's got a surface to it. It's self-illuminated, and I've seen the video and the photo, and it's impressive. And Kathleen, she's a serious person. That's my mentor, actually. So
I've heard it both ways, that the blue ones actually could cause damage and harm. And in fact, for 2 years after I had that encounter, I had rashes that were like spreading throughout my body. I don't know, I went through all the allergy tests and this and that. Did I have Lyme disease, whatever? Finally, thank goodness, after 2 years of that, which was horrible, it went away. But I've heard it both ways, that they can heal and that they can harm. So I don't know what the truth is.
I think every time that especially like if a portal is opened up, that it emits gamma rays, and those are not good for us. They can wreak havoc with people's nervous system. I mean, after I had my close encounter with a craft, and I was right like 35 feet from it, my feet went entirely numb. I had to, my doctor actually retired me from a 40-year nursing career that I had because I needed to start using a cane to get around. I still don't have feeling in my feet. I don't have diabetes. I've gone to a neurologist, and we spent the whole day. They put the little like acupuncture pins all up and down my body and ran the electricity through trying to find the origin of it. And he said, I can't find the origin of it, but you're definitely, you'd stick a needle in my foot and I wouldn't react. And that happened like right after. And what's interesting, when I got close to the craft, I was driving to work. It's one of, a couple of experiences I've had. My only UFO sighting. When I got close to it, it was leaving as fast as it could go. I think that they didn't want to harm me, that they knew that we were fragile creatures and that they were probably trying to preserve my health. But yeah, if you see a portal open up or you see a UFO, don't run towards it. Okay, it's not a good idea.
I always do. I'm sorry.
Well, Steve, you're different.
And my friend Mark saying, "Don't do that. You don't know what's going to happen," and then he doesn't remember 2 weeks later that he even had that experience with me. So I love what Sector 31 said here, and it's very interesting. A lot of people are talking about the black boxes. So, and that is interesting. It's like. When I leave this life, is that what's going to happen? I can think of worse things. So,
and going through some of the documents, I got a good few boxes of John Schuessler's, who's one of the founding fathers for MUFON. Actually, yeah, he is. And in one of the documents I found, they talked about black boxes on the moon and other locations that are soul recyclers. Have you guys heard this?
I've heard about that. Yeah, I don't know.
And I'm like,
I haven't made my mind up about that one.
I haven't either, but interesting.
The monolith in 2001 is kind of a black box, isn't it? The monolith in 2001 is kind of a black box, and that thing really
it looks like this.
But,
it
seems
like
so familiar.
We all have,
everybody
has a black box now. It runs our lives.
It's not a prehistoric handball court either. So,
yeah.
Well, this has just been an amazing conversation. It really has.
It sure has.
And we could go on and on. We just scratched the surface.
Yeah, we could. We could talk more about Led Zeppelin too.
This whole experience.
Even I could talk Grateful Dead stuff all night, actually, and Beatles. But
another band.
Katie, you gotta tell everybody what your websites are and and your new podcast that you have going on.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
I know Steve, he always puts that good stuff up.
Yeah. So
my stomach is still growling. I keep turning my honest to God, it's my stomach. I'm not like, well, we won't go.
So I got to a crossroads with my research, and I thought, what's something I could do? And I decided that I wanted to take people along with me because I like to go, like I just went out to Medicine Bow last spring, and I like to go to New Mexico, and I just went to the Miller Ranch and did the Miller Ranch and talked to the Millers, who are also on Beyond Skinwalker. I thought, what can I do other than a podcast? And so I decided to start a YouTube channel called Rocky Mountain Ranch Research with Katie Paige. It's on YouTube. I'm just starting, so I think I only have like 400 and some subscribers. So if you're out there and you can give me a like and a subscribe, it helps. That would be amazing. But that's what I do. I take cameras and we go out, and I take you all along with me because I think that's the only way to get the answers is to kind of help each other out and collaborate and stuff. So
great idea.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
What fun.
Awesome. And I'll see you at Contact in the Desert again this year.
Yes, you will.
I don't know if I'm a I haven't heard whether I'm a speaker yet or just I know I'm on panels and stuff. So
Yeah,
but you know, have to
that'll
hear
be a lot of
about
fun.
unknown planets.
And and I am a co-host on UAP Studies podcast with Dr. Michael and
Yes.
Jason Gilmat, and we will be doing
Jason,
UAP Studies
Jason.
live from Contact. So that'll be a lot of fun to do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
I guess that just about wraps it up for us. And Katie, thank you so much for being here tonight. It was
Thanks for having me.
Everybody watch tomorrow's premiere here on this station, the Jackrabbit case.
Oh yes,
I'm doing your promo for you, Steve.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the pre-premiere is at 3:50. You have to suffer through the long intro that's really designed just to get people in and have them get settled in before the show. And then of course we have the show, and at about 10 minutes to 5 we go off, and then Susan Alloway's episode, which follows Judy's, will premiere, and it's longer than Judy's. It's over 40 minutes long, and it's quite a story. It's quite a case. And again, I thank Earl Grey Anderson for hooking us up with Susan, because I remember when I was at the first time I met you was at the meeting, the MUFON meeting, and you talked about the case. And as you talked about it, I was seeing the whole thing, because that's what I do. You know, I'm very visual, and I saw the car on the road. I saw the jackrabbits, the 3.5 foot tall jackrabbits on the road, and I said, "Oh man, this is one I've got to do." And and
there's no such
I was
thing
able
as
to do that. Thank you and
3.5
Susan.
foot tall jackrabbit, by the way, people.
What's
They
that?
weren't jackrabbits, but never mind. Yeah, I don't want to get
yes, they were. They were little bunnies.
Harvey.
And please, people, don't get mad at us when we joke and make fun of this stuff, because you really, if you don't have a sense of humor about this stuff, then you know, I can't tell you you're taking it too seriously, because you are taking it seriously. We all are, but it is good to have
a
humor.
sense of humor. So
yeah, they sure
like
do. Twisted though it is. I mean, coming to standing out in front of your house on the street under street light is quite a sense of humor, you know. I could tell you another story that's even more, but that'll be in the next show. But yeah, it's important to have a sense of humor. And I know when Whitley was on, Whitley and I, because we've known each other for so long and spent so much time together, we were making jokes and somebody got upset. So, but we don't take it personally. We just know each other, and it's how we make light of it, because this is heavy stuff.
Yes.
Yep. And it affects your whole life. Like for me, if I didn't have a sense of humor, I'd be in the loony bin or something by now.
And you're supposed to go to bed after a show like this and sleep well, right?
Right.
So you're not going to have anything on your mind keeping you awake. Every sound in the house won't be grabbing your attention. So no, you do have to incorporate the environment we are becoming accustomed to into our lives, and try to lead normal lives.
Normal.
Sorry, it just didn't work.
Yes.
Didn't come out right, but you get the idea. So thank
Fairly
you,
normal.
both of you, very much, and really hope to have you back again, Katie, so we can go into more detail, and we'll bring Earl along too. And hope you all join us tomorrow night.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you very much for having me. Everybody
Hope
have a
it'd be
great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
You too. I have a submarine sandwich waiting for me. It'll stop the growl, you know.
Well, I hope it doesn't submerge before you get a chance to eat it. All right, you guys.
Bye.
Good night.
All right. I'll see you tomorrow.
Again. And thank you, everyone in chat, for all your support and your love, because it does not go unnoticed. It is very, very much appreciated from Mary and I, and we love you very much, and everyone here does too.